Great. Good afternoon. We are delighted to have you join us for our professional development today. We have a lovely surprise for you, and we will be doing it in a coffee chat or interview style.
We are here in the Boca brand new studio. So we also wanted to make an announcement and invite you to come and check us out. We'll let you know after the session where we're located. We're basically second floor above the breezeway. And with us today, we have a very special guest. She has been working with us for a few years, extraordinary instructor. She was the winner of the Excellence in Teaching e-Learning Award, and a fantastic colleague and partner. So without further ado, let me introduce Rosemary Rahill from the Department of Languages and Linguistics. Good afternoon, Rosemary.
Yes. Bonjour. I always have to start with my French greeting. Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody involved in making this session happen today. There's a lot of behind the scenes activity here to make this happen, and thanks for having me.
Yes.
And the wonderful thing is that a lot has been happening behind the scenes, but the actual content and the wisdom that you're going to be sharing today is first your own, and second, something that you have been collecting or learning as with your own teaching practice. The title of our presentation today is Developing Your Own Standard Process to Get Your Course Student Ready. And like Judy said before, it's an interview or coffee chat session where you'll find a lot of grab and go tips from a very experienced instructor.
So why are we here today? We're going to be talking with Rosemary about some of the things that she has, some tips and tricks that she has garnered from her own experience. So Rosemary, before we move on, what courses do you teach?
Well, I teach all French courses, from the very beginning courses that are part of the student exit requirement through 3,000 level classes, including commercial French, which is French for business purposes, advanced grammar. I have a cinema class right now. So I had a couple of more pronunciation and phonetics. So quite a vast array of French language classes and culture.
There's a lot going on in there. How often do you teach some of them?
Where this was derived from is, I do teach several classes online, but where this is derived from is our basic language program classes, which are taught every semester, including in summer, and taught online twice in summer and in spring and fall. So that's more the object of where I garnered most of this information, which is the basic language program. So French 1 or French 2.
Okay, and so what I'm hearing is that you consistently teach several courses repeatedly. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
And so there's got to be a challenge, and I know you're an experienced teacher, but there has to be a challenge with the balance between consistency, making sure that your students get what you want them to get from the course, and yet keeping things new and fresh.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what we're seeing here, there is a balance between having really good structure in your online courses from every aspect of it, and also the proper amount of flexibility. We don't want any autopilot situations here. Absolutely.
So we're going to be talking about that from Rosemary's experience, that balance between providing the structure that makes it easy for you to transition, get your course student ready, and also for your students to know where things are, where to look for their information, their resources, and also that flexibility that is probably the mark of an experienced teacher. Before we move on, I wanted to say that all of these images that you see in the PowerPoint, except when indicated, are also Rosemary's. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the setup. What happens as you are getting your course ready and as you start thinking ahead of time of what's going to come, what you need to get done to get your course ready?
Well, the first thing you want to do is you want to create, what I like to do is create some kind of a shell. So in other words, I'm teaching the course typically every semester, but maybe not. But I like to take the latest iteration of the course where, you know, we're always tweaking, right? Just as a face-to-face class, we're always improving and making things better. So to create a shell, a target, so I take that course, the last iteration of it, it could be in week 13 or 14 of the semester as well. And then I create a destination shell, a shell for that. I don't want to put it right away into the course, the actual course in Canvas that students will be accessing. I want this interim sort of transitional point. That's what I call the destination shell.
And also, we know that you're very intentional about naming your course and naming your files. Can you tell us why?
Yes, and that's kind of a learn the hard way sort of is that it's very scary in Canvas to, are you sure you want to delete this course? Are you sure you want to delete this course? So, and I'm sure I still have some courses in there lingering I could get rid of. But what I like to do is create this, name the shell, the destination shell, for example. I could call it, you know, shell for spring 24 iteration of 1120. Like, be really specific about what you call it, because it's for you. It's not a published course, right? So therefore, I would take the existing course, the last iteration of it with as many tweaks in it, right? And import it or copy it into this shell and be very specific about the naming. And you mentioned files as well. I always have a folder in my course, whatever the semester name is, spring 2023, fall 2024. And I do like to keep those, just they can be used as a reference, but they're there, they're nice and neat. And I'll put, for example, my syllabus in there, obviously, although with the new smart syllabus, I'm not sure what that looks like yet, but files that are particular, flyers, maybe anything that's particular to that semester, then it keeps it nice and neat as well. And then when you copy the course, those files aren't sort of stranded somewhere out in outer space. We're not sure where they go.
Right. So this idea of making that shell your own, I know you have some tips, like some kind of system where you kind of provide notes to yourself. You have other tips and strategies. Would you like to share with us what these are? Sure.
So I like to, now I have my destination shell. I like to highlight in yellow things that I know I need to change. Or you could also, maybe for some people, it might be better to simply make the change right on the spot. But there might be some things that you have the information yet, or you want to think about it. You might want to change the name of an assignment. So I'll highlight those in yellow. Also, you may be, and this is my case too, sharing this shell with GTAs, for example, or with other colleagues, so especially if it's a multi-section class. So I will highlight in yellow what I know the GTAs need to modify. Then when I share it with them, it's an easier process for them to just look to those things and avoids a little bit of, can avoid confusion. But we do need to make sure we remove those yellow highlights. I'm not, Mary's always helping me with the accessibility, which is really important. You don't want to leave anything highlighted in yellow when you publish your course, but it is a good way to kind of have your eyes go to those items. Yeah, go ahead.
Ed, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, well, I see you already brought up about the navigation strategy linking to information pages. Now, again, this is very specific to me. I don't know how your courses are, but for example, we use an outside online component called Connect, for example. So students have registration information for Connect, and you might use other outside sources. So rather than having on multiple locations, oh, here's the Connect registration info, for example, to really just have a page dedicated to those things that you know are going to change every semester.
Right.
And then always just link it to that page, because even in the homepage of the module, I still think it's effective to link to that page rather than have all the information reiterated there, because it is easy to forget those things.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah, it's easy to forget to update in multiple places, but if you're linking to this page, you only have to change it in that one page. Same thing with dates. I believe you want to talk about neutral dates.
yeah. So in descriptions, I mean, I do like to sometimes through the course of the semester, I might say, even in an assignment description, remember this is due Wednesday, I might get specific, but you do want to keep dates or days as neutral as you can in any descriptions, referring to the module whenever you can, as opposed to a day or a due date, because the module numbers are a static thing that we keep very clear. So that's safer.
And the same applies to when you're doing your videos. You want to try to stay away from semester-specific information for those videos that you are going to reuse over a couple semesters.
Yeah, absolutely. And then later on, when we get to the more flexibility side, there's a way I like to enhance the course while keeping those date neutral videos, but with some add-ons after.
Absolutely. I skipped a page. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Judy.
And so clearly then your next step, once you've gotten your shell together, is then to copy it over into the actual course. And so want to switch over. What tips do you have for making that as you copy it over into the live course, which isn't live yet, but you're just getting it ready?
Absolutely. So then at that point, we know that, and we won't get into the whole thing about when you copy the course, having the dates adjusted. That's a whole nother topic on the technical side. Yeah. But even still, when it comes to dates, I like to call the module, module 1, Monday, August 1st through the Sunday, August 8th, or whatever it is. I like to call the module all of that, because I find it's easier for me, it's easier at a glance, and obviously you need to change that, but it just makes it, I think, very clear to students. And then if it's a 1-week module, I just leave it standard because most of them are, but in my case, some modules might be a 2-week module, and I like to put that right in the date. So the date range and the duration of the module, I think when students click on the syllabus tab or the module tab, I just think it creates an easily navigable environment for students.
Yeah, and it adds to their comfort level by knowing exactly where they need to be. If it's Tuesday, we're in Paris, right?
Well, wouldn't that be nice?
Yes, yeah, lovely.
Now, this is something that just to be aware of. It happens rarely because of all these other methods that I'm doing now, but occasionally, and I know there's a system also in Canvas to check all your links to make sure that your links are all, they all match up. But I also kind of have this maybe neurotic tendency to want to go through as a student, and I'll just go through and just focus on, okay, now I'm checking all the links, and there still might be things you need to fix. So go easy on yourself because it happens. But to, go through the student view and make sure, because a file could somehow be linked to a previous iteration of the course. If you look at a glance, the course has the same name, you might not pick up on it. So I tend to name my courses on my Canvas dashboard, FRE 1120, Spring 2023, I tend to do that also, to name the actual course on my dashboard. That creates sort of a separate space, but just to be aware of that as well. And then did you want to mention about the course launch checklist, or?
Yes, I wanted to know what you want to put, what things you would include on your launch, your own personal launch checklist.
Yeah, well, the list is very long, and I did it in the beginning for myself, and I still like to check that. So just what do you need to change? You need to change the syllabus, you need to change the homepage, the date. You can go as specific as you want. The dates of the course, when the semester that it's offered, the CRN, you could keep it super specific. And I did develop one that's that specific for GTAs who have a lot of other things going on in their brains too, even though they're wonderful, but sort of to make it as foolproof as possible. So you can really go into detail about that. But also I tend to have my list evolve because I say, oh yeah, that's a really good way to do that. So what we're doing here and what maybe some feedback I'll get from you, I'm going to be adding those things to check when I do my checklist. And it's okay to double, triple check, of course, as well.
No kidding. Yeah, it's a good idea. And I like that you also include in your own mental notes and probably your checklist as well, is to check on the accessibility of everything in there. That's so important.
Absolutely. And I still often have questions about that. Mary knows, and you both know, I know a lot about that. We have a lot of indicators now in Canvas that we didn't have before that are really, really fabulous. Like a file will have a green, I'm not sure what that icon is, but a green looks like a half a clock or something next to it, like a meter, if it's accessible, and red if it's not. Also with announcements, it's really, it's been made much easier than it used to be before. Then you just brought up about the welcome video announcement. What I was saying about you want your videos to be semester neutral as they possibly can. When you make these beautiful videos with our amazing COSI team, you don't want to obviously have to do those every semester, but it is nice too to have that balance with sort of a more spontaneous one that I might be sitting, where I am right now in my office and make a video announcement welcoming students into the course, or from time to time just poking my head into an announcement. It could not be easier. You don't even need to go through MediaSite. It's just something that lives as an announcement in that course that's only for that course that you can then delete at the end of the semester. And I think that it also makes you more alive in the course. It's like, well, these videos could be, 3 years old. I mean, it just creates that teacher presence when it is almost less professional looking and more this sort of situation where you're at home making the announcement. Without the dog barking, preferably, but still.
Or the cat walking in front of the computer at my house.
But then again, the students love that, So
yes, they
why
do.
Not? Why not? After all, right?
Yeah.
All righty. So we're going to transition from the setup, the structure part of preparing your course to the actual more teaching-oriented parts of our session. What Rosemary calls flexibility. So the teaching side, these changes from semester to semester, and this is a point where maybe you can ask that question, Rosemary. And one thing that changes for sure is your students. With that comes this idea of not assuming that you will have the same kind of students or students with the same qualities, the same needs, semester after semester. And this is a very, very interesting, I think, lesson, Rosemary, or some wisdom. It is very personal to you, but I think that all of us as teachers, as faculty members can really relate to.
Absolutely. So we don't want to make any assumptions, even about that, all the work that we've done up till now. So that's one assumption we're not going to make. And we want to preview the modules again before publishing, and also even assignment instructions. Again, without feeling too much pressure, if we see we still need to tweak something, we have to be flexible with our students, but also with ourselves, and understand that it's a living, breathing entity. And sometimes we need to feed it, or we need to trim the leaves, or we need to do something, right? And that's fine, and that's normal, and that shows that we're doing our job, in my opinion. That's the teacher presence is the biggest present, and that shows that that's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you have different populations and of students, right? And also your sections will vary from semester to semester. So what are the things to take into account?
Well, everybody, probably many of us have already thought of this and realized this when my friends who know that I teach, they say, oh, well, young people, they all know how to use technology. This is just, we're going to myth bust that one, right away, which we probably all realize that, but we can never assume that a student has a good grasp of Canvas. We don't know if they're a freshman. We don't know if maybe they don't have as much aptitude for that, or their technical abilities, or using different tools. We really, really can never, ever, ever assume that. We have to make sure that we have that level of understanding that somebody's knowledge could be very minimal, or their ability to navigate in Canvas or other tools could be minimal. Just because they're young, there's an assumption we really don't want to have. And just because they're older like me, doesn't mean we can't figure things out either, right? So it does go both ways for that. And then foreign students, I mean, there could be some language barriers. If English isn't their first language, they might, have a little more difficulty with instruction. So just keep that in mind. And also, there are different practices I've noticed in some countries where they don't have the same level of requiring citations and giving credit for citations than we have. So, I learned that by seeing it happen and then asking students, personally, well, did this whole paragraph, like, did you write that? Well, no, I took it from, but in our country, we don't necessarily give credit or have to paraphrase. So just, kind of, zoom out if you're seeing certain situations that might seem different or new to you, and understand that it might be coming from a different perspective. It's not necessarily something, dishonest or malicious, right? Not only foreign students, but just in general. And also non-traditional students, we want to understand that we have different populations. I mean, that's the beauty of FAU, and the whole diversity that we have here is part of the beauty of what we love so much about being here. But there are, many different levels of that. So no assumptions, really no assumptions.
Absolutely. And I'm going to jump in here and put a little promo in for something that I've mentioned a couple of times before in other sessions. I follow Michelle Pacansky-Brock, and her topic is humanizing online courses. And one of the strategies that she uses, and I'll be happy to share this with everyone when after the session, is a survey. Now we have the student self-introduction in the courses, certainly, but one of the other recommendations that she makes is doing a survey of the students that just goes strictly to you as the professor, where ask them what name they prefer to be called, and if there's any pronunciation tips that you might need, to ask them about if they are, if they're working, if they have a full-time job besides going to school, if they're caretakers for children, or maybe parents or grandparents or something, and what things they might be apprehensive about with the course. And I also like to ask, what tips do you have for a good online course? And so then I take notes, because then I know what I have to make sure I include. So just a little survey to give you some background information that they would not necessarily share in the introduction, but might be willing to share with you.
No, I really appreciate that idea. Absolutely. The more information we can get, and to do it in a confidential manner like that students feel comfortable sharing.
Yes. And the more we can support the students in ways like that. Like, I found out that one of the students that I have takes a 12-hour trip on the weekends because her father is recuperating from some health challenges. So she goes up there to help her parents each weekend. Consequently, there might be some due date issues for her, and I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if that's happening and the module ends on a Saturday, that's information you need to know, because obviously we don't want students waiting till the last minute, ideally, but knowing that, have some kind of additional built-in flexibility there for sure.
So you were talking about a welcoming video announcement. But you also have very interesting tips about regular announcements. This is a way to keep your class fresh, your contact with your students meaningful, in updated as things happen in your class. I would like to hear from you your idea about class time and announcements being that kind of time to be shared with your students.
Yeah, I really do enjoy announcements, and we have oral exams in our classes, and I joke about the fact that I do send a lot of them, but it really is sort of like a class time sort of opportunity. That's how I like to see it. And class time is as in a face-to-face class. But we also have to let go of the notion of control, just in general teaching online. I remember my first time years ago teaching online, and then you publish the course and you kind of sit there and you wait for something to happen, like you're clicking people to see if anybody logged in. But we have to let go of the notion of control. Just like in a face-to-face class, students could be looking right at you and not hearing a word that you're saying. And with announcements, it's worth the time to do it, just like feedback. It's worth the time to take the time, even if one student looks at it. So we have to let go of the notion of control that everybody is seeing this. But by providing it, we're doing our due diligence. So that sort of just puts it in the right frame of mind and mindset, and encourages me to just continue to add more to it without knowing whether or not anybody's even getting anything, although obviously they're meaningful, or even looking at them, because we don't have control over that. So we have to let go of that.
And it could be that you post an announcement at the beginning of the week, preparing your students, let's say, for the talk abroad assignment or for an exam, and they don't necessarily read it when you post the announcement, but they may read it when they're getting ready to work on the exam or to work on the assignment. So that also that idea that, there's that built-in flexibility, not only on your due dates, but on how you communicate and expect your students to read or engage with the content or with the instructions.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, you just brought something to mind there too. And absolutely, if it has to do with a specific assignment, in the announcement, linking to that specific assignment page is another. Okay. And then also being really specific about the name of the announcement. Okay.
Yeah.
Preparation tips for Talk Abroad 1. And then maybe links to things or whatever I want to put in there. Encouragement. Students get nervous about that. Could be a funny video reminding them to breathe. And then, and then here's a Talk Abroad assignment page. Then we're making a really easy multiple entry point navigation system. If they miss it, it's because they just really never went into the course, really, actually. And then we adapt those.
So some of them you adapt and others you can reuse. Will you tell us more about that balance again?
Yeah, and this was, again, maybe some of you have discovered this, maybe not, but to me, it was a really big discovery about how I can keep certain announcements. Of course, I can still modify them, but that relates specifically to a specific assignment. And then when I copy the course, all the announcements are going to be there, and you have to change all the dates on them, or they all going to post when you publish your course. So to avoid that, and we had confirmation, thank you, Mary and Judy, for your research. We did have confirmation on that when you create the announcement, if you delay the posting of the announcement when you create it, it could even be in 5 minutes. It doesn't matter. You just delay the posting. And then and again, we're not going to be discussing that actual transfer with how to use Canvas and have Canvas modify the dates to the new semester. It will, just like your assignments, adjust those dates. So when you get your to be published class, the announcements are there, but they're set up at a similar timing in the semester as the previous semester, which again, you might want to change, but you don't have to physically go through every single one before you publish your class. And then of course you want to delete as you go, something that is not going to be relevant. Come to our Club Francophone event this Thursday, by the way, before the basketball game, fortunately. And then once that event happens, then, I can delete the announcement right away so it doesn't clog things up.
Absolutely. So we'll be sharing this PowerPoint, and within the PowerPoint, we have that link to the Canvas guide where you'll get all the information about how to change your dates moving from semester to semester, and that feature that allows you to change all your dates in one place. And our next topic is all about your students.
Absolutely. And that's why we're here, actually, is to do everything in our power to assure student success.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I really love to have a space for students to self-evaluate. It could be an assignment. And Mary, I think that was years ago that you presented the example of using that at on what we call our Talk Abroad assignment, just to give people a little background. Students learning French will have a 30-minute conversation with a native French speaker somewhere who lives somewhere in the Francophone world. And then they have to listen back to their conversation. Painful, I know. I did it when I was learning French. And then, but self-evaluate, you know, how did I feel? How did I do? What could I do differently? So that's just an example, but to self-evaluate for students is really important. And also, you know, we give feedback on assignments, make sure that they're looking at that, they're looking at how they did and what I always say, always look first at what you did correctly, and don't look at the mistakes first, please. You know, go with the positive first. Like, you want the good news or the bad news, get the good news first. And also a space for them to share best practices, which is standard when you use our amazing COSI. The FAQ discussion board can be used to share best practices as well.
Yeah.
And what I like about that idea, Rosemary, is that it shows that you respect them, where they are, how they feel about things, and what their perspective, what their perception is of what they're getting.
That's a good point. Absolutely. I think that puts students at ease, for sure.
I just was going to say, talk to us about exam wrappers.
Yeah, that's a term I got in an AQ. I'm going to mention that later course. But if anybody has any idea on what an exam wrapper is, you could feel free to share it, or we'll continue to elaborate ourselves on what that is, what that means to us, or maybe Judy and Mary, you want to share what, you know, your ideas about that, or we can just.
Well, I think it sounds to me like that it's a way of identifying for the students the value of things like that we're talking about it beforehand, and then we go back and talk about it afterwards.
Absolutely. So an exam wrapper can include a lot of different things. For example, asking students, polling them, or in a discussion. There are many different ways of getting this across. It could be an extra credit survey. Again, your use of surveys is brilliant. A survey. What course resource was the most useful to you for this exam? This is really valuable information, right? So we know, okay, I can elaborate more on that, or okay, I'm going to keep that. Maybe there's something you had in there, you're not sure if it was useful. But again, you know, these things are going to change as well as you have different students with different levels, right? But for them to let you know what resource was the most useful, kind of is a reminder for them to have used the resources, because maybe they didn't. I don't know. So it could even address that issue as well, post-exam, right? Maybe for the next one. Ooh, maybe I better, there are resources, you know, that sort of thing, right? So, and what aspect of the exam was difficult? What was the most challenging? You know, I mean, there's so many questions we could ask. And then obviously we want to use this information for the next iteration. And also we can use this information for group feedback. You know, we know our content, we know the challenges of our content. We can almost anticipate what some group feedback might be. Okay, guys, remember some verbs, blah, 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 or whatever it is, or kind of direct objects and indirect objects. That's usually a thorn in everybody's side. We can usually anticipate what's going to be difficult, but it's still great to get that feedback. And I like to provide specific information to students. Okay, and they specifically do sort of an exam wrapper one-on-one through Canvas. And then I provide each student with resources about the specific questions they have. So this could be general, but it can also be very specific to each student. It's a great way to deliver extremely personalized feedback as well.
And I would want to include, maybe change the name of it, because not only would it work, but these questions and this type of feedback work for exams, for any assignment that you do, especially any of those major assignments that they do, they have coming up. That's some really great information to have. Plus, one of the things that we suggest from here multiple times is doing some sort of a mid-semester survey about what things have been effective, what things can we make it, how can we help make this work better for you? And then that way you can let them know that you are taking what they are saying and using it right there in the class that they're in addition to the following semesters too.
And the premise of this discussion is getting your course, semester ready. So obviously these are things that you're going to be adapting into the new iteration of the course, right? So we have very few minutes left here.
Yes, and we have one last topic, and I totally love your picture there. It's about, I believe this is your personal library.
It is part of, yeah. How'd you guess?
Go figure. So tell us about using the resources as a faculty member. We were talking about how you guide your students in using the resources. How about using resources for your own prepping of your class?
Absolutely. And honestly, the amazing thing is, and I tell my students, and this is true for us as well, how much time can you save by asking an expert about how to do something rather than, getting really too stressed out trying to figure it out on your own. It really is a time saver. And I'm going to recommend day in and day out. Kosi, thank you. Well, some of you were here today. Some of you maybe view this afterwards, but already clearly you're taking advantage of a resource. And there are obviously many resources there, course design, expertise, certification, la crème de la crème. And also using their design for developing an online course, I believe is important because students are going to have that same visual recognition of where things are. It's sort of like if you go in a face-to-face classroom, they may look different, but you basically know what to expect. There are going to be chairs, there's going to be somewhere to write, there's going to be a blackboard or whatever, whiteboard. So, you want to create sort of that familiar visual environment so the rest is just easier to navigate. And I also recommend AQ, which many of you probably heard of. We get invitations to that. And so by taking a class through COSI and or AQ, the Association of College and University Educators, you get insight from being a student yourself in an online class. And that is absolutely very personal, but really a fantastic experience to have at least once in a while. So it keeps you in touch with the challenges, what works for you, and then you can integrate those things into your courses as well.
And so we have been, we consider ourselves quite fortunate to have access to all the one amazing faculty that we have and share. And Rosemary Rahill is one that has been more than willing to step up to the plate and share her experience, her wisdom, and her joy of teaching. So we thank you all for that. And we thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you. Inspired by you.